Welcome to Life by Design, episode 331. Welcome to Life by Design. I'm your host, Dr. Jamie Richards, and I have a special guest on today's show. It's Marcus Filly. Marcus is the CEO and founder of Revival Strength and Functional Bodybuilding. He is a 6-time CrossFit Games athlete. We talked today about a lot of different aspects of his new program and really a new approach that he would consider functional bodybuilding, and something that I've been following Marcus online for some time and really enjoyed a lot of the content he creates. And I felt like there'd be a ton of value for our listeners, whether it be in our training facilities, part of Life by Design, or just people who listen to the podcast. So Marcus is a dad, he's a husband, he's a business owner. He's got 2 little girls just like me, so we had lots in common. And I think you're going to really, really enjoy today's episode of Life by Design. Hey guys, Dr. Jamie Richards here. Welcome to the Life by Design podcast. As I said in the preamble, I'm super excited for my guest today. And before I welcome Marcus onto the show, I want to talk just a bit about how I came across Marcus. I pay a lot of attention to other athletes and coaches, and obviously with Life by Design, we've got our 2 CrossFits under our brand, our own facility here at the Underground Fit Club. And what I often see is a lot of, a lack of advanced knowledge. Lots of so-called experts putting up their videos and their training programs. And I think a lot of things that might look cool to people, but, at worst, they're probably unsafe or at least unproductive. And so I came across Marcus and I started to watch his material, watch his Instagram, follow some of his training, and actually became a customer, my own, a repeat customer. So I'm excited to have you on the show today, Marcus. Welcome to Life by Design.
Hey, thanks for having me. And I'm super excited to chat with you on the topics that we've said that we might touch on today. And also really been fun to hear about your business. And it's super interesting to see how you've kind of taken, something that sounds like a similar route to me in right. some regards, and created something really unique.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, we're excited at Life by Design, and lots of people who listen into this podcast are part of Life by Design, and others just listen from afar. So what I'd like to start with is, I want to know about you, your story. I know a bit about it just from following you, but I think our listeners would get a ton out of it. Where did you start off on your fitness journey, and how did you end up where you are today?
Well, I'll give you kind of the abbreviated version, which is essentially that I was like growing up, played a lot of different sports, was just attracted to different organized sports, thanks to my parents for getting me involved. But, it was a little bit of baseball, a little bit of soccer, played some golf, tried some basketball, tried a bunch of different things. Golf and soccer really stuck for me. That was kind of where I was like channeling competitive, energy and focus for my high school years. And then as it got closer to college, it was make a decision. Do I want to play golf or do I want to play soccer? Which I kind of went with the sport that was like what people told me, like you can play golf till you're, in your old age. Right. This might be your only chance to play some soccer. So I kind of was like, let me do something that's team oriented, that's a little bit more physical. Let me see if I can make a push for a college, team. Mm-hmm. Which I was able to do at the University of California, Berkeley, which was a great program. And certainly my focus was more on academics within college, but I still loved playing. And the theme, if I rewind all the way back to like youth years and playing sports, was that I always loved just the training aspect of it so much. People used to ask me like, well, what's your favorite soccer team that you follow professionally? And I was like, I actually don't follow professional soccer. I just love training for soccer. Matter of fact, I'm not even that sure I love the game that much, And so it really became apparent to me that I was different than other guys on the teams that I grew up with. I was doing, workouts outside of soccer practice. I was going to the gym. I was hitting the gym after a round of golf up at the country club that my parents remember at. In college, when we had strength conditioning for our soccer team, 95% of the guys just lobbed it in. They didn't care. Right. I was there to like soak it up. Like, hey, teach me how to power clean. Teach me how to do all these things. And getting strong and fast. And so I think something clicked for me midway through or towards the end of college, where it was like, I don't need to play sports to do this anymore. I can just train for the love of training, and really took a deep dive into just a lot of different, strength coaches programs that were out there. Paul Chek, Charles Poliquin, doing obviously some, the American NCAA strength conditioning kind of model of, power clean, power snatch, bench, dead, back squat, and then do some plyometrics. Really just loving that. And then was just on a search for kind of more. What else was out there? Someone tipped me off to, like, my roommate in college was cycling. I started watching the Tour de France. I was like, I'm going to get a road bike. Started riding on my road bike, and then after college it was, try all the group fitness classes that were around at my local gym, because I wanted a challenge. And I just liked being around other people that were, motivated and inspired through fitness. And there were some good coaches at the gym I was at. And so one thing kind of led to another in my fitness pursuits. Somebody said, hey, come try this CrossFit class with me. And I went to a CrossFit class here locally and was like, man, this was 2008 roughly. So almost, 10, 11 years ago. And just had talked to Dr. Kelly Starrett was my coach at the class. He was just a guy, no one knew who he was. And he was super charismatic and knew a lot. I already had a sense of like who knew their stuff and who didn't. And so his kind of gym and the way that they ran things just got me kind of fired up. And then I just went really deep into trying to learn as much about the CrossFit methodology as I could through the website. Started coaching it shortly, a couple of years later, and was participating in the group fitness thing myself, and then got pulled into the competitive CrossFit scene, sort of just by chance, which then led to a pretty extensive and successful career for myself in the CrossFit Games, which taught me a lot of lessons about life, fitness, coaching, and it was a big catalyst for where I'm at today, which is our Revival Strength coaching brand, where we're not coaching CrossFit, but we work with a lot of CrossFitters and a lot of CrossFit athletes and Gen Pop, clients that truly have the same goals that our CrossFit clients always had, which was to, look better, feel better, be more functional. And we're just approaching it in a way that I believe now is a bit more aligned with what they really want, which is longevity, feeling good, and looking better as they age, rather than chasing elite performance.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And these are really what you're talking about are the principles that attracted me to what I was hearing from you in the first place. And swing back around to the CrossFit Games. Marcus is being way too humble here when he said he had a successful career. You've been to the CrossFit Games 6 times, 3 times as an individual athlete, 3 times as a team member. 12th fittest man, I believe, wasn't it, in one of those CrossFit Games?
That's correct. My last one, right?
And then 6th on the team, I think. So let's just call it out. That's a pretty amazing career in terms of CrossFit and fitness. And anybody who follows just, functional fitness probably doesn't understand what that takes. But, maybe can you speak to that just very briefly? Like, what was it that you learned about that in terms of the preparation and what it took for you to actually be prepared and perform at that level?
Well, what it taught me was that, to really get the most out of oneself when it comes to, this could be true for anything, but certainly with the sport and physical development, there has to be just this universal alignment of all of your lifestyle principles, core values, relationships, just the energy that you surround yourself with. When I was growing up, I don't know how many years ago it was, but in those bodybuilding years that I had, high school, a little bit of college, like I love Pumping Iron. That was one of my favorite films.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I love Arnold Schwarzenegger still to this day. He's somebody I admire a lot. And one of the things that, people used to kind of laugh a little bit about when they saw the film was just how intense he was about, bodybuilding. It's like everything he talked about is like everything has to be about he was selfish. Everything was focused on this, like no distractions. He's thinking about his biceps growing all the time, right?
Yeah.
And he was a champion. He was a champion in a sport that, maybe people don't understand and they can't wrap their head around. But, to be the world champion in anything 7 times in a row, right. It takes that kind of focus. The same with like Lance Armstrong, drugs aside, it's like,
sure,
focus. So
exactly.
I experienced that to some degree. Now I was kind of coming up in the CrossFit world, in the competitive scene before things had elevated to a point where, you could get by without being completely aligned to just being a professional athlete. You could still have a side job. You could still maybe run a business. And nowadays that's less common and it's phasing out, soon it's going to be all just, super focused, paid professional athletes. Right. But, sorry, long-winded answer, but it just was, it was about learning that true alignment to your goals. If you want to achieve the greatest amount of success, you have to completely fully align. And if you want to achieve moderate success, then you can moderately align. And if you don't want to have success, which people will never say that, but their actions will actually show that they don't want to have success. They're like, I want to lose weight. And you look and you evaluate with them and they're not aligning any of the things that they need to be aligning to that goal. Right. They think they changed one thing and it's supposed to fix it. And so that was really powerful for me as not only just a person and somebody who's going to apply that lesson to other parts of my life, but as a coach and somebody who's trying to help people make change. I knew that I had to start speaking a message then and then forever about consistency and alignment in all aspects of your life. If you truly want to see, what your body change or your life change in the way you hope.
Right. Well, I mean, anybody who's listened to the podcast before knows that I'm probably super excited right now that you're saying all these things because they are super aligned with the things that we talk about on our podcast, that we've written about in our books and our material. And it's exactly what you said is, our formula, success formula is time, plus essentially it's time plus consistency to the power of correct principles, right? You got to do the right stuff, but then you got to do it for a long period of time and you got to do it consistently and in all different areas. And so I love that you're saying that. And so in preparing for CrossFit Games and getting into CrossFit, and I think the real message that I want to get from my athletes, I have my selfish approach here is I want my Fit Club athletes listening to this because there's a lot of value here. CrossFit's wonderful, but the best CrossFits don't necessarily train using general CrossFit methodologies. And that's, I think, what you had uncovered. That's what we uncovered. And so we have a very different approach here in the Fit Club, and our other CrossFits under our brand have a very different approach. What was it that you saw that, wasn't really lining up with what you were hoping for your clients? And how did that lead you in the direction of this functional bodybuilding?
Oh yeah. Wow. Well, you can break up CrossFit. I've kind of broken it up into sort of like from phases. I mean, there was early 2000s to about 2006 where CrossFit was the .com era. And that was like the initial adopters, and Greg Glassman was in control of programming. And it was very thoughtfully designed with a great balance of long and slow, not long and slow, but long and enduring. Yep. Just pure resistance, heavy resistance work, and then just a touch of that middle ground, high intensity.
Right.
Okay? So, and if I think about how I would design in general for people, a general population person, it's like a lot of aerobic spectrum, conditioning, resistance training, and then depending on their abilities and what their goals are, just a splash of that super tough intensity work. Right. And if they don't have the mechanics for it, or they don't have the stress profile that matches up to be able to handle it, we might just skip that phase. So
right.
That early phase was kind of great. And there were some amazing things that got learned there. Now, then you translate that into the next phase, which was the growth of the CrossFit gym. The goal was to try and take basically what was on .com and turn it into a 60-minute class for people. Right. And the group fitness or the class-based model for the years that had preceded that was more of like, come in and sweat for an hour. And so people came in thinking they were going to get something like that. They obviously got, they got re-educated on what that looked like. But it started to create this problem where it was like, okay, there's some value in these principles of CrossFit. We can generate a ton of high intensity. And that high intensity middle ground where people just got their bell rung was sort of what had the closest feel to like what the previous group fitness era looked like. And so group fitness facilities started to like hammer that stuff and just do it way too often and way too much. And then that progressed over the years to get a heavy influence from the CrossFit Games, which was the part of the CrossFit brand, the CrossFit headquarters. They were growing this massive business, which was CrossFit Games. And it was a massive marketing tool for them. You got these epic athletes that are looking like, nothing people had ever seen, doing stuff people had never seen before. Okay, let's leverage that. And it was like heavier, more, harder. Let's test these limits. And the affiliates were just sort of pulling from that whole world of programming and fitness tests and just injecting it into their group fitness programs. And people were kind of eating it up because it was like long, like hard hour-long, workouts that were just like brutal with heavy weights. And it was just feeding into that thing that people thought they wanted, which was just to feel like they got their ass kicked.
Right. It was almost an addiction, right? People felt addicted to it. And I mean, for us, we saw the same thing, but then, where does that take you over time? And what did you start to see with your clients when that was the model?
Some of the things that really were glaring were people not making progress. And progress had to be defined by what they came in wanting.
Right.
I want to lose weight. People were not losing weight. Yeah, you had your and every gym had this sort of the person who was primed for this type of program to result in success. Right. And it was typically a male client who was, kind of over fat, and they came in and within 2 months they lost a ton of weight, and they were the poster child for the gym. Right. But meanwhile, every female that was in the gym from 35 to 45 years old was just not seeing any change on the scale. Their bodies were just getting more puffy, and they were like, "Oh, I feel like I'm getting more bulky." Right. And we're like, "No, weightlifting doesn't get bulky." And I'm like, "No, they're getting bulky. Watch them. They're building muscle, and they're stressed out, so they're getting more inflammation. So they're definitely their Lulu pants are tighter, So this was legit happening, and we were just trying to talk our way out of it, And over time, I was just like, look, there's something backwards about this. People are generally, so they're not looking better. There were just a ton of injuries, right? Yes. And chiropractors like yourself and other people in the physical therapy world were making jokes at us like, thanks, keep sending me business. And we're like, fuck you, we're trying to help everybody. And, but really people were getting hurt. And, look, to still this day, and then I had the best of intentions. I wanted everybody to be truly, maximizing their potential and reaching their goals. And I didn't see it. I was not in the camp of fitness professionals who was like, this thing is broken, I'm getting the hell away from it. I was more like, no, I'm in it and I want to try and figure it out, fix it. How do we make it better? Right. So that ultimately led me down this path of functional bodybuilding, and really just to sort of branch out and create my own brand in Revival Strength as a coaching organization, to sort of put a line in the sand and say, okay, look, we're on this side, the side that says the client's goals, the client's abilities, and the client's needs come first, and the program comes secondary to that.
Right.
Versus the other side, which was the program, the method comes first, and that we're just going to fit everybody into that box no matter what. And to say we can do that because we have this, universally scalable and adaptable program is just horseshit. It's just, right. It was like, that was too easy to say. And I actually saw over years and years and years that it was not possible within the model of 10 to 20 people exercising at the same time under the direction of a hourly paid coach who is burnt out. Yeah. So I said, you know what, I don't want to do that anymore, even though the business that I was running was making money and I was getting paid and I was helping a lot of people, but there was a lot of people that were kind of on the fringe and not getting what they needed.
Well, you came from the right place in the sense that you knew what you wanted to do. It's not like you threw the baby out with the bathwater. You've gone through so many training approaches before. And I think, for people who are new to functional fitness, they think somehow CrossFit was, invented and birthed out of nothing. And, all of those aspects and all of those principles were already there. They just did a great job of branding it and putting it together into a system. And so, we can peel all that back and say, look, at the core of it, we need to move well, which is, I think, one of the most fundamental pieces. And on top of that, then we need to figure out the other requirements for our body. We need to develop strength. There needs to be certain types of conditioning. It needs to be applied to each person, scalable in a way based on wherever they're at. And as you said, there's lifestyle factors, there's stress factors, there's so many different aspects. And so that creates the complexity of programming. And of course, all of our members don't quite understand how difficult programming is and to really put this into place. So, Marcus, talk to me about the functional bodybuilding approach. Share with me 2 or 3 of the really fundamental core principles that are going to be valuable for my listeners.
Yeah. Well, some of those are we try and break those down in our, taglines, our little mantras, right? Yeah. And maybe the one that really jumps out to me is simple is strong. And that's one that we like to say because in this age of fitness being promoted, marketed, and run through online media and social media, the things that capture people's attention are always the, flashy, sexy, fast, quick, stuff. And that could be exercises or that could be a program that's going to get you there fast. And whereas I think anybody that's been in fitness for a long time, who's been successful for a long time, if you look at how they've done it, they have built their foundation on simplicity and just the core fundamental, movements of the body, the movement patterns. So within functional bodybuilding, it's like we always start with simplicity. And this means, assessing clients' abilities or looking at, a group of people that you might design for and taking kind of a collective look at what they're capable of. And then, I don't know, this is sort of an arbitrary number, but let's take 3 steps back from there.
Gotcha.
Okay. And what does it look like to take 3 steps back from where they're starting? Because even if they're starting they've got the ability to do a rear foot elevated split squat, let's go back 2-3 steps and let's layer on even more foundational strength, motor control, and stability around the joints so that when we progress back to that rear foot elevated split squat, they've already advanced their skill set and their strength. Now that lesson got pounded into me after 2016 when I had just taken 12th place at the CrossFit Games. I had been training now 7 years consecutively as a competitive CrossFit athlete. I was, by all measures, I was at the peak of my fitness and I was extremely broken down. I was really in, a ton of pain, and just energy wise, just was burnt out from the years of doing that. And I went through this functional bodybuilding phase where I returned to a lot of very, very simple movement patterns that never show up in CrossFit. And I use that as like a rebuilding phase for like the next 6 months of my training life. And I was able to recover injuries, come back stronger, feel more confident in my body and what I was capable of doing, redevelop passion for training again after I had kind of lost it. And all of that came from doing things as simple as lateral band walks, RNT split squats, Jefferson's curls, just really slowing things down and simplifying, even though I was capable of doing, a 280 pound snatch.
Right.
So that's kind of where, that was very general, but functional bodybuilding, it's like, okay, we got to simplify things. And how do we simplify things? Well, we also, number 2 is we implement a lot of control points within our program designs. And that's the part that you alluded to earlier, which is like programming is hard. Right. And it's difficult because if you do not, as a coach, you need to understand how to program a workout that basically gets the response from the client that you are intending to. If you write 21-15-9 on the board with thrusters and pull-ups, and you take 100 people and you give them that workout, you're going to get 100 different responses.
That's right.
And that's not coaching. That's because as a coach, you know what the client needs. Therefore, you prescribe something that will elicit that dose response, and that's going to help move them towards their goal. And so what that missing variable is I just kind of generally label it as control points. A thruster for 45 reps and a pull-up for 45
right.
reps. What's the cadence, that you want those thrusters to be done at? Is this person supposed to stay in the aerobic spectrum, or do you want them going lactic? Do you want them going lactic in the first round or in the last round? Like, do you want the load to be limiting, and do you want it to be more of a weight training session for them? Okay, well then rather than just kind of throw up random numbers, let's actually write something that is aligned with what that looks like. So if it's an aerobic session that you want for this client and you want it to last in the 15 to 20 minute range, then why don't we do a moderate weight or a lightweight dumbbell thruster with some, upper body pulling that they can handle, and do it in sets with rest and rinse and repeat, for many, many sets, so that they get the same movement patterns trained and they get the right dose for what they're capable of doing. So adding in control points within functional bodybuilding is huge. So we use, lots of useful tricks and tools within conditioning workouts to make sure that people are not just, getting that lactic acid rush that they, have no control over and really doesn't yield a lot of the results that they want. We implement control points to help people improve their motor control and their base strength before they start moving fast and try and do things that are really, a lot of dynamic muscle contractions and more. So I would say kind of those would be the hallmarks of what functional bodybuilding programs look like. And it's at no point in there did I say that we don't want people to work hard and there isn't room for intensity. It's just to say that we err on the side of starting people slowly and simply and progress, and that allows for progression. Whereas if people start too fast and too hard, they will never progress. They will only plateau immediately, and they will be stuck. And that was exactly what I saw for so many years within CrossFit, was that everybody was, just about everybody, with the few exceptions, I would say I was somewhat one of them, that I showed up to my first CrossFit class having the base requisite strength to do this stuff. I could do kipping pull-ups on the first day because I had done strict chin-ups for years, but most people hadn't done that. And so they come in, and their first day in the gym and every day after that, was always working beyond their abilities. And that is a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, I think you nailed it there. I mean, so much good stuff, and I know people listening. This is the type of episode you listen to a couple times, Marcus. So there's a lot of really valuable information here. I love that you said rinse and repeat. I say that all the time. It's a trademark statement for us.
Nice.
Show up, work hard, get results is a big one. It's written on the wall in our gym, right? Like, we'll do the programming. You just need to come. And then work hard when you're here, and we'll be fine. But the one that stuck with me really, and we'll finish up here on these last couple points, and that's, I love your statement, get built, not burnt, because I think that really does, wrap this functional bodybuilding approach up. You've got simplicity and foundation, and the control points and building in tempos, and at the end of the day, that kind of mentality of, look, I just need to be able to do this over and over and over. And I don't know if it was, I think in one of your emails you had talked about, wouldn't it just be better to train 300 times this year, at 20% less intensity than 200 times at 20% more intensity, because you're hurt and you're injured, and it's just, it makes a lot of sense, Marcus.
Yeah, well, I'm so glad that it resonates with you, and that it's resonating with other people out there. I mean, I definitely, that was one of the things, to kind of retell the story of like how it got started for me, is like I was training, before CrossFit. Like I was like training for training's purposes. Right. Like I wasn't training to lose weight. I wasn't just training to get more muscle. I didn't have like a physical goal. It was more of like, I love to train and I love to feel the way I feel. And there were, I don't think there were, I can't remember many times. I mean, there were probably some German body composition or German volume training programs that I did where I felt pretty beat up, but aside from that, like I generally felt good when I would work out and when I would train hard. And I wouldn't get to the end of a week and be like, oh my God, I need a rest day so bad, And then, but I then got into, which to the point of what you just said and consistency, it's like, that meant I just could keep going back to the gym. Right. I remember my first training injury came at the end of a German volume training cycle that I had done, where I was, I was like in a calorie deficit for quite a long period of time. And I did multiple training programs back to back. So I didn't really do it the right way. And I hurt myself. I got a back injury, which was the first time where I was like, oh my God, I can't train. This is fucking terrible. And what am I going to do? This could be the rest of my life. Oh no. But then when I got into CrossFit, and competing, it was for the first few years, it was a regular occurrence. I was hurt. I had to take days off. And, I wasn't in the mindset of like, I'm a professional athlete where that happens. I was more in the mindset of like, dude, I like to train because I love to train and I want to feel good and it makes me feel balanced. And this competing thing is messing that up. What the hell? Like I don't want to have to feel like my knee hurts for a month and have to modify movements and stuff and maybe take a day off at the gym. Like that's the last thing I want to do. And it was just, it created a ton of emotional and mental stress for me. And, that was when I kind of thought about that. I was like, geez, like this whole idea of like pushing it to the limit. If I look at the last 6 months, I had to miss probably a month's worth of good training because of that. What if I just like dialed it back a little bit and instead of missing a month, I only had to miss 3 days? Damn. That probably would mean the net positive is that like, it'd be a net positive. Like I would, maybe dial it back a little bit, but at the end I train more often and I'm going to be better as a result. So, and then of course, when I started to think about that in the eyes of somebody who's not competitive, I just want to look good and move well. It's like, there's zero margin for them to want to take days off as a result of overdoing it. I did Murph on Monday and I didn't come back to the gym until Saturday. It's like, why? Was that worth it?
Well, when you think about someone who comes to your facility who trained 0 times the year before, you're looking at going from 0 to just anything is going to be moving them in the right direction. Days off, stuff, or just, I think they set people back. And really the more important point is that's why you see so much drop off and attrition as people, they get super excited and then they plateau and they fall off and they're not gaining. They don't feel good. They're not getting the results. So we've got to put our clients first. And I think a lot of today's episode was about that. So I'm glad we covered all of those points, Marcus. I'm going to send people to a link where you've got a bunch of free stuff that they can go and download and check out. And I super endorse Marcus. Go check out his Instagram account, follow him, watch the workouts. If you're a Fit Club member, we're going to see similar integration anyway in terms of our program. There's lots of crossover. And, again, we even take some of what Marcus is teaching through his content. So again, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show today, Marcus.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. And I really enjoyed these topics we dug into today.
Absolutely. So guys, go to the show notes, lifebydesign.com/podcast. Find today's episode and click on it. And thank you as always for joining the drive to 1 million families worldwide living life by design.